Welcome to Imperative Ministries Business and Spirituality Podcast. In each episode, we discuss matters of spirituality and how they relate to the world of business. Since people are comprised of mind, soul, and spirit, we will also take a look at subjects such as mental and physical health. Thank you for joining host Michael McIlwain as he interviews people whose life experiences provide an opportunity for learning and inspiration.
And there in its circle, while flowers did grow, bloom where you are planted, and God will make you grow. Bloom where you are planted, and God will make you grow. Tell other people that Jesus loves them so. Tell them how he came to earth and died to set them free. And bloom where you are planted, wherever that might be.
Welcome, everyone, to the Business and Spirituality Podcast from Imperative Ministries. Today, I am blessed that we have Amy Nordhues with us, who is going to tell some of her story. Her book is Preyed Upon, and we know this is an issue dear to my heart. I have had some loved ones who have been preyed upon by religious leaders, and as a pastor, I believe we must stop this abuse, and there's things we can do, and things are happening, but it's not my story. Sometimes you need to hear from other people, and we're going to learn maybe today why some people aren't as I know some Christians get offended. Well, I tried to hug somebody, they didn't want me to do that. Well, there may be a reason for that, and we're going to learn that we may need to rethink some things that we're doing and that we've always done. And I'm not a person that's convinced that this has just begun. I think it's been going on for a long time, because as long as there's been evil in the world, it's out there. But Jesus said he was a light, and we come to shine the light on it. See, I work for, do a little, see if I can show it up here, for GuardTech Pest Management. I'm the sales guy there. And even later this week, Amy, I've got to go up into the an attic here and shine a light and look for some rat infestation. I'm not really excited about that. But the light expels darkness and allows me to see things, and we shine lights on things. We do it with termites when we have to examine them. We have to shine a light and show things. So there's a lot of termites and ants and rodents out there in the spiritual world in our life, and we're going to run those things out so health, wholeness, and healing can happen. So again, welcome, Amy, to our podcast. It is so good to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I told Amy in the pre-interview talk that I was trying to get all the talking out first, so I let her talk. Okay, y'all know me. I'm a fast preacher. I like to talk, and but I'm here to be the interviewer and let her talk. So again, those who know me know this is an issue that's real deep to my heart, and I've learned the pain in my own life that one of the ways that we deal with it is to help others. And so Amy, I know that you've had there's been some difficult moments in your life, but you've been able to triumph and overcome them. And I was blessed to be able to read all the way through, I guess you'd say, the negative portion of your book, okay? Telling the story about all that happened, but and I'm excited about it. I haven't made it yet to the really good stuff that's coming, but I could connect, even though I haven't experienced that. I've counseled with many people that have been where you've been. So yeah, just tell us a bit about what you're doing today, how you're helping others, and some of your resources, and then we'll sort of explore your story and see what we can do to make things better in this world.
Yeah. My book focuses on an abuse that happened in 2013. I had sort of fallen away from church, and in 2012 I started attending a Celebrate Recovery in my town, and just to work on issues in my marriage and parenting and lingering depression and issues surrounding past childhood sexual abuse. And And in that process of being at Celebrate Recovery, and I also started attending the church where it was hosted, my faith kind of came alive for me for the first time. I realized that I could have a personal relationship with Jesus, and that, God could answer my prayers, and that he was more present than I realized. And so I was sort of in this real excited, naive kind of spiritual place, turning a corner on the depression. And so when my friends and the pastor's wife recommended this doctor as a therapist for me, and I found out he was an elder at this church that I just loved, and really respected the pastors there, I was really excited, and I thought it was part of God's plan that I ended up there. And so I started counseling with him in 2013, and started to see a red flag, not maybe 8 months in. Didn't realize that the red flags and the grooming really started on day one. But like we were talking about earlier, he was really skilled in his manipulation. He used, the Holy Spirit. He said the Holy Spirit was his boss, and the whole therapy, we would open in prayer our sessions, and the therapy stemmed around sort of finding these broken parts of me, which to me just meant ages where I had traumas, and inviting Jesus into that space and praying away evil. He said my depression was a result of having evil spirits attached to these different parts of me, which I was willing to accept, because I had tried forever to be rid of this kind of low grade depression, and never could shake it. So I was sort of open to anything. And, he was a leader in the church, and he was on the prayer team, and he came highly recommended. And so anyway, I'm giving a very brief version, and you can ask, what you would like, but basically I realized that it was becoming inappropriate close, towards the end. So I'd maybe been seeing him for a year. I felt like, luring me into an emotional affair, which I wanted no part of. I had no idea that he was grooming me for sexual abuse. That wasn't even on my radar screen. But, sadly, when I went to a close friend, and she was the pastor's wife at the church, and I told her that he had assaulted me, and I gave her the details, she said, well, maybe he's just trying to teach you to stick up for yourself. So I realized in that moment.
When I read that hit me in the gut. I'm like,
I realized right then, I'm on my own. They don't want to deal with this. Nobody wants to deal with it. It's going to be uncomfortable and inconvenient. So I'm going to be left to my own devices. And I ended up staying a little bit longer, and then eventually was able to get away. And the pastor and his wife then helped me in getting out towards the end.
That encourages me that they did.
Yes.
Because so many places we're seeing ladies, Southern Baptist Convention, some people still don't get it, that there's things happening, and they've covered up for some really bad people. And I think the idea was, we can't let this get out. It's like, I've told people this is happening in politics. I'm not trying to sound like a QAnon person, that some of those conspiracies were going on during the last election, but I am convinced certain politicians and people that promise us certain things never fulfill on them, because, hey, somebody's got something on them. But I said that would end in a moment if they'd say, I did it, you're right. And they may lose their position, they may go to jail, but they would be free. And those people aren't free. And there's a lot of people hiding a lot of secrets. And I believe that's why a lot of churches don't want to deal with, I think that's why some people even support abusers, because they've got their own secrets. And well, if his gets out, mine may too. And
or it'll get out that I have let other things slide. And I kind of wonder if that wasn't the case with this guy, because there were some things that I learned that had, inappropriate things that he had done 20 years prior with a patient, and she had committed suicide. And and it's like, if you admit this now, then you're going to have to admit that you let something else, you let someone else down as well. And, you know, when you said like keeping the secrets in the church and how the pastors aren't free when they do that, or church leaders aren't free, you know, a lot of times, like in my case, I feel like I was blessed in that my pastor stood by me, and he insisted that the elder step down as elder, or the abuser step down as elder, you know. But then after that, it goes into a kind of a PR protect the church mode, and then everything shifted, and it was very painful. And I feel like when you said that, it triggered a nerve in me, because then I felt like, you know, if the truth isn't told to the congregation, and I mean, you don't have to spread assumptions, you know, I'm talking if a medical board does an investigation, if a criminal or, you know, does an investigation, if there has been an outside objective investigation done that has uncovered factual information, then I feel like that victims deserve for that to be shared with the congregation. Otherwise, victims then have to walk around feeling like they're carrying secrets and that they're not free. And we're not free because, you know, I mean, like, I live in a small town, and I, to this day, don't know what version of the story people have. I was only in that church for 1 or 2 years. The abuser and his wife had been there, I don't know, 15, 20, and also in the medical community. So, you know, I have to go to doctors and not know what they think. I have to go to the grocery store, and it's just very unfair that we don't get that freedom that the truth brings. So it's important on so many levels.
It is.
And I agree with you, and shining that light, it brings freedom to, you know, victims and church, and, you know, anyway, on a lot of levels.
All right. There's I share this story often. There was an evangelist called Rolf Barnard. He died in 1969, but he told about a great revival where he preached, and the Lord got a hold of a bank president who had embezzled a lot of money, and he had been praying and praying that God would forgive him and things would be well. And finally, he just got under great conviction and confessed. And during the invitation time, was arrested that night. And this Brother Bernard said, "I've never seen a happier jailbird. That guy finally got free." And so, you know, and I would just say this: some people talk about restoration and God can forgive these people. Yeah, they can if they repent. And a lot of people aren't repenting. Repenting would mean throw the book at me, I did it, and
Exactly.
and
Right.
and you can do some good, but just like these evangelists that have fallen, yeah, there's forgiveness and grace, but you know, so I guess that's like I said, we don't. I know you had some abuse in the past too that shapes you. We won't go into. We don't need to speak about that, except just to say, I know it affected your mindset some, and it sort of makes you doubt. And I think there's other people out there doing that, doubting, especially the religious community. You ask a question like, "Well, how dare you ask that? That person would never do that." I have a person in my church who has been. We have a guest that comes occasionally that's a little handsy. And I've said, "Look, if he triggers you, you need to run and slap him. I'll back you up all the way." I mean, not that this person's abusing people. I don't believe he's doing that. But I've said, "You won't get. Don't worry about it. You get triggered, and you slap somebody that does that. You won't get any trouble for it." I said, "I'll back you all the way, because people need to be aware of that. You know that I'm trying to educate people about that."
My abuser as a church elder would often encourage his victims to attend the same church, so that he could groom the congregation and groom everybody around him that he's just a touchy-feely type of guy, and he's just a sweet, silly type of guy. He's just a goofy grandfather type. And he made sure every Sunday. Now, I was going to church by myself. My husband wasn't coming with me for about a year to this new church. And the abuser made a point to hug me every Sunday after church. And I sat right in the front row on one of the sides. And another physician in town told me afterwards that he thought that was odd, but you know, that's all part of the show. So that if a victim comes forward, they say, "Oh yeah, you know, he hugs everybody. He's just like that, you know, he's that type." So yeah, that's often a cover, not saying that every touchy-feely person
that's right.
is inappropriate, but
I was
you have to
watching
be
on the
careful.
news this weekend. We had two female anchors, and one of them I could tell is just a little more handsy. Something happened, and she reached over and touched the arm, which for me is my mother was never really very touched. My dad would hug us often in a good way, but and I find that affirming if someone does that with me.
Yeah.
But so there are people like this lady who probably is not abusive in any way. So if you're one of those people, that's cool. Just understand that if somebody says, if you go up to Amy and she says no, then it's fine. It's nothing personal. Just let it go, and smile
Yeah.
at her and say, well, God bless you, I love you, and good to see you
Yeah.
today, and move on. That's
Yeah. And you were saying like the childhood abuse, and whether it's emotional or sexual or physical, it changes it changes who you are on the inside, and
Yes.
and it changes your DNA almost, and it just completely warps your ability to sort of see yourself how you really are, and that allows abusers, they can spot that
yes.
really easily, and they know they can manipulate that. And just think about how many people have been abused.
Mhm.
It's so common. So there's so many of us walking around that look like, we're otherwise healthy, functioning adults, but some of the beliefs that we have about ourselves, I think some of us would be shocked to realize what we are accepting as truth.
That's right. Yeah.
And so when I found myself in a situation which I never thought I could be taken advantage of, especially as an adult, I was kind of horrified as I kind of sat back and watched it happen, and watched me make excuses for him, and watched myself minimize things. And, part of that is just that I'm a good-natured person and I'm not a sociopath. Therefore, it is more likely that I misinterpreted something than that he's an evil mastermind, wearing a cross necklace. So there's that. But then there's also these beliefs that I had about myself that made me vulnerable to his attack, such as that I don't have the same rights as a regular person. Like, who am I I even felt, after I knew he took advantage of me, who am I to turn in a church elder? Who am I to turn in someone that is, an elder, my senior? Who am I to turn in a doctor? Like, it takes away that sense of worth.
Of course it does.
And you see other people, you think, oh, well, it's infuriating. If it happens to somebody else, you see right away it's not okay and it's wrong. It's just hard. But it doesn't seem to apply to us when we feel that way.
Right. So those who are listening, we need to know it is always okay for you to turn somebody in if something's wrong. If you suspect something, I feel right about something, you can say something, because especially in the religious community, this happens. And somebody shouldn't always be trying to make you doubt yourself. That's even when you have, maybe you're wrong in your doubts, there should be a kind. This is why I quote that passage out of Matthew 12:20, where Jesus said he wouldn't break a bruised reed, he wouldn't snuff out a smoldering wick. Yeah. So pastors, if you're listening, look, you may be just as good and wonderful, and you're just trying to boldly lead people, and you got to have a little tenderness and mercy. You got to. If somebody's struggling to trust, give them time. Okay. So I think part of that is we try to fix, the good people try to fix things too quickly, and then by insisting people just believe and accept. I heard one person say this way. I never thought about Matthew 7 this way. Matthew 7:7, ask and it'll be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it'll be open. And a lot of people say, well, I can ask for all these blessings, but really it means if I've got doubts or questions, it's okay to ask Jesus. He's not put off by that. And as a religious leader, I shouldn't be either, So I did want to ask you, and I hope I didn't trigger anything with you. I should have known better when I asked, when we prayed before we went on. I want to know, it would always, anybody that I interview with, if you don't, some people are triggered by prayer because this guy started out with prayer. Mm-hmm. And so pastors, some people may be triggered by you saying, hey, let's stop and pray. If they say, I don't know about that, that's okay. Yeah. It doesn't mean they're Satanist or anything. It just means that it's triggering. Yeah. So you can pray in your spirit, if you need to. The Lord understands. And does that make sense? I hope that I didn't do that with you. If I did, I apologize. Okay.
You didn't.
Okay. But it is for some people who have been abused. And so we need to understand that. folks as we listen. But so, and I know you said, like I said, that the pastor and his wife helped you through this, but it sounds like you're not at that church anymore. So have you found a way to be connected with the body of, I'm sure that trust was still very difficult, you know.
Yeah, initially I thought, well, I'm not going to let this abuser take everything from me. I'm not going to let him take my church and all this. And I tried to go back, and it was brutal for me.
Right.
It was so triggering and painful. And, there was the gossip mill. To this day, I have no way of knowing who thinks what.
Right.
And, to a point, I don't care about that, but I couldn't do it. So, there weren't really a lot of other churches I wanted to attend in a smaller town, but my husband and I did eventually together, because this abuse kind of broke us down and rebuilt our marriage into something amazing, so that's been a huge blessing. And then my family, my children, that trickled down. But he and I started attending a different church together, which is something we had not done for years. And we enjoyed it. But I will be honest, I kind of related to what you said earlier. I am closer to Jesus than I've ever been, and I will always be close to Jesus. And my faith is strong. But I am struggling with the idea of church now. And I'll tell you what happened is, we were going to church, and I thought I was doing great, and I thought I was enjoying it. And I was volunteering, and then COVID hit, and we stopped going, and I have not been able to go back. And I realized, at first it was COVID, and then I realized, okay, it's me. There's something I'm like glad that I have a reason to not go, and I'm disappointed about that. I would like to, have a different answer, but it's still kind of a to be continued. And it isn't just going to church. I haven't been able to figure it out. And so I've got healing and growth to do there, but it goes so deep that I've had friends say, oh, well, you can watch these amazing services online. And I don't want to do that either. So there's something, that I have not worked through. I'm not exactly sure if I can even say what it is.
I'm not a therapist. I would say maybe we don't need to watch the amazing services online. There's some, God is doing mighty work in some itty bitty little churches that are just podcasting and showing some little, and I'm in one, but I mean, I've got a friend that's doing the same thing. They're showing the warts and all, that the singing's not the best in the world. Pastor isn't the smoothest guy in the world, but you can just tell there's something real happening there.
Yeah, I've thought about that. That
may be, and there's still, and some people criticize those guys for not putting on a slick enough program, but we're reaching people. I've got a big following in the Palo Alto, California area, and I don't understand it. It's about 80 people. It's consistently every month they're downloading. I say big following. That's a little church running about 30 people. That's a big deal. And all I'm saying is me stumbling all over myself. Sometimes God is using something there that I know they've got all kinds of big shot places they could attend and watch. And
isn't that something?
So I don't think you're a bad person for not going. I think we have to work through that. And I'm trying to teach other religious leaders, let's be patient with folks like you. You may yet come around, but there's a real distrust there.
Yeah. And I was analyzing it recently because I've been asked this question before, and I don't know that this was the right thing, but the first church that I tried after realizing I can't go back to my old church, for whatever reason, I wanted to talk to the pastor about it there. And I just wanted him to know. I didn't want to give him details, but I just needed him to know I'm really struggling to be here. And if you would just know and be able to like give me a nod or something, or just keep me in prayer, it would help me. And I don't know that that was even right or wise of me to do. But when I had that meeting with him, we didn't even get started. And he told me, don't bring drama from your old church to your new church. And I was so hurt and so offended because that isn't in my nature at all. And I know that was a setback for me. Now, he doesn't know me. So, I mean, I can stand back and say, I get what he's saying, because, I don't know who all he's encountered and what all he's heard. And,
Right.
but him to come to that quick assessment, it did kind of burn me.
Yeah, I can understand why you'd be burned as a pastor. I mean, if he knew something, oh, I got big problems with him asking that or telling you that. I get that we don't want, people can bring drama and pride from
Right.
other things, but still, I sort of want to know about it as a pastor so you can work through it. That would be, if you hadn't worked
Yeah.
through it, I would tell you don't join our church till you work through it. But I don't mind hearing about it. That's.
Yeah.
I don't think you were wrong to ask that. I think he could have nodded and said, "I got it. We're going to pray with you and work on this."
Yeah. And I wasn't going to launch into any,
No.
if he had just listened,
Right.
he could have built a huge bridge there for me.
Yes.
All he would have had to have done is listened, been sympathetic, and said, well, I'm glad that you are courageous enough to try our
Yes.
church. And, I hope that, just something like that. And it would have meant the world to me, because, after this abuse happened at my old church, and it was probably, I don't know how long after, a year or two later, I was struggling, and I haven't had no one to talk to about it because it's too much. It's not,
Right.
something you can share
It's
with
heavy.
a friend over coffee.
Yeah.
So I had reached out to my old pastor and said, I'm just struggling. Could we talk? And he said, you need to talk to the pastor at your new church. Well, right. Like, I'm going to walk in with someone who doesn't know me and try to summarize this whole thing. And so that hurt me. If he had just given me 10 or 15 minutes, that would have been awesome. And I'm very reasonable. So I thought, I get it. He's busy, but I can't. So I did. I tried to tell the pastor at my new church, and that's what he said. So I think I just have some hurts I need to work through, and I'm not sure where church will fit in for me in the future, but I certainly want to read my Bible, and I certainly love to worship, and I do love communal worship, and I do want to learn. But
I think, and I don't know if this is helpful. This is something in the back of my mind. I'm telling people, why don't you just go to a church and you don't have to get super involved? I mean, not that you don't ever want to get involved at some point, but it's okay if you have a season where you just come hear the word preached, you enjoy some singing, and you go home and that's it. You don't really get involved, and they can't handle that. Some places can. Why aren't you doing more? Just I'm working on it, and sadly, I think I don't know. I think we're so quickly trying to grow our churches sometimes we don't realize it is a long process, and as a pastor, God's been dealing with me for a long time, and I don't even know if I'm going to be pastoring 10 years from now. I mean, I believe God may have something else for me. I'm not going to quit going to church, but I know some people think less of me because I allow my kids to be involved in sports. And I've occasionally let my son go to a Sunday game and play because I felt like the team needed him. It would have been disloyal for him as a key member to miss. And I've had to deal with that. And it's, even as a pastor, I've seen him and done that because I have seen good men and women educating and teaching my kids. This is sad. Sometimes better life lessons than they were hearing in church, such as you don't win all the time, you don't have victory all the time, you lose. We have to work hard. Nothing's guaranteed. Instead of, if you just trust the Lord, all your dreams will come true. Well, that's, my son's been playing hard. He's been almost a starter in ball from about second grade on up to ninth grade, but he's on the bench this year. He got COVID. Then he severely sprained an ankle. And then we discovered that he'd started wearing glasses back in the spring, and during the summer, he didn't need to wear them to play ball. Well, his shooting, and when you're shooting guard, you need to shoot, and be able to make buckets. And he's got to where he was shooting about 15% accuracy, which is not acceptable. And it turns out, he said, I couldn't read the wording on the ball. So it's getting better now. He's wearing goggles, but you see what I'm saying? And yet at the same time, he has some men who are tough on him, but they love him. And I think the church has a lot to learn. And I think sometimes we're so desperate for volunteers. And I don't know. I just think the Lord, after COVID, is already doing a reset in the church. And I think what you went through First Peter 4:17, where it says judgment will begin in the house of God. I think that's what's happened. And many religious leaders are scared to death. I mean, they don't know what to do right now. Their world has changed and they're freaked out. And then the old ways of doing things aren't working. So just keep seeking the Lord. And if I can be a help to you, but I would just say, and there's others. Amy is not the only one. That's why I'm addressing that. And there's been other people. You see memes on Facebook. If you really love the Lord, you go to church. Well, you need to go to church. It's helpful, but sometimes you got to work through things, just like Amy's. And pastors and religious leaders and fellow Christians, we can help with this, but we've got to be patient and loving. So
Yeah.
I know people are listening, and I want them to hear that. Because you have precious people like Amy here who are trying to serve the Lord, and we don't just I served in a church that had a real grounded theology, and this pastor, sometimes I thought he could have been a little more praise the Lord, hallelujah. He was very low key, but he didn't believe in triumphalism. He believed that we triumph in Christ, but we're not always up on a high all the time. And a lot of Christianity is teaching that, and that's why there's a theology of brokenness. And Jesus is the suffering servant. And I noticed I worked in a restaurant last summer with a lot of people who had knowledge of the Bible, even though they weren't Christians, and they related to that better than, like, Jesus understands your pain. Jesus suffered when he was here on earth. And I think a lot of Christians haven't grasped that. And that's why I think, Amy, you've got a ministry
Yeah.
for a lot of broken, hurting people.
I used to think for most of my life that I was failing God because I didn't feel triumphant. I felt kind of depressed, and I felt like, well, I'm clearly not praying right, because, you hear a lot in church and you hear from other Christians, that, you can have, and I do relate to the scripture about, peace that surpasses all understanding.
Yeah.
And I have had those moments, but I don't float through life in that state all the time. And I sometimes feel like some people make it sound like that's really easy, and they do, because they pray enough or they meditate on scripture enough. But that can really be disheartening if you feel like you're supposed to feel like that all the time.
I'm not
Do you
sure I
agree?
believe them. Okay, I believe you. I'm not so sure that, I mean, and I think they're covering up. I mean, I try to show that, yes, there's victory in Jesus. We need to understand that we do, but victory and joy can happen when my house is burning down. I mean, I'm losing
Yes.
everything I got, but
Right.
because Jesus is our greatest treasure. That's it.
Right.
I preached on that last Sunday. With joy, you shall draw water from the wells of salvation in Isaiah 12:3. And I didn't plagiarize a guy. I told our people ahead of time that I had read a message from the great pastor of the 1800s, Dr. Alexander McLaren. And I said, I got to add this in my sermon. So he's heavily influenced his sermon. And that was one of the points he made, is that there's this joy is not, doesn't mean everything's going well. In Habakkuk 1, we read, in Habakkuk, maybe chapter 3, I think it is, that, the fig tree doesn't blossom and the crops fail, I'll still trust in the Lord. That's one of my favorite verses is John 11:35. I shared it every funeral. Jesus wept. To me, that's one of the most powerful verses I know.
I love that scripture.
Jesus wept. The wild one and he knew he was going to bring Lazarus back from the dead. So people say, well, but he still wasn't such a bad deal. He was going to resurrect Lazarus, but Lazarus was going to die again. So Mary and Martha had to watch her brother die twice.
Yeah, I was just talking about that scripture or that scene with someone recently, because I've encountered so many people in my life that feel like, emotional pain or emotional expression is negativity. And that's a perfect example of Jesus, knowing he's going to bring him back to life, could have very easily rolled his eyes and said, people, I mean,
y'all quit crying. What's wrong with
y'all? Come on. Like,
that's right.
But no, he stopped and he wept with them, and he put himself in their shoes, to know how it would feel to be in their shoes. And he gave them the time they needed and didn't rush their emotions along. And I just love that, because I've beat myself up for so many years trying to stamp out my emotions and feeling like I have too many of them, or they last too long, or they're too intense, or, they're a flaw essentially. And so I'm glad you brought that up. It comforts me remembering that, that even Jesus cried for something that he knew could be fixed in a second.
Yeah. But he had the long view too. And I've been using this. Sometimes I watch it in the morning before I go to work, but reruns of Touched by an Angel come on. And I know that some Christians years ago were against the show a little bit because it was a new age thing of angels that was popular in society at that time. I'm like, yeah, there's some things off base here, but like my Christian brothers and sisters, man, when that show was on, why did we not use it more as a springboard to witness to people? Because there's so much good stuff there that I know people have been reading their Bible, and even though they're not quoting the actual verse, the things the characters are saying, I'm like, that is scriptural. And it's like, a lot of it is in the midst of pain. There was an episode where, Monica the angel could grant a miracle. And it turns out that she finally does, but it ends up being the miracle of forgiveness, that somebody forgives another person. It wasn't winning the lottery or all these other things these people wanted. It was finding that peace within their heart, and that the Lord supplies. So peace that surpasses all understanding. It doesn't mean that there's a Facebook page that I subscribe to called Doubting Believer. I'm like, Doubting Believer? I said, but yeah, that's okay, because you remember when Jesus was walking with the men after his crucifixion, and actually it was after his resurrection, and the men from Emmaus, and he's he finally sits down and eats with them, and he just ascends up into heaven, and they're like, hey, did our heart not burn within us? But Jesus had said before that, oh, you slow to believe. And so there was a writer a few years ago that came up with this thing called the slow burning heart. In other words, we're sort of slow to believe, but deep down there's something there. And the longer I walk with the Lord, I think you're seeing it too, that what you've gone through makes sense of pain in my life. I started talking with people years ago about my upbringing and some of the problems, and I found out I wasn't alone. But some Christians that never experienced that couldn't get it. They were just like, oh no, you're just making too much of what you went through. You just need to toughen up and straighten up. And I don't know if it's in your part of the country, but there's a commercial about mental health and counseling, and I'm seeing it on TV in our part of the country. It's a person that's sort of struggling with something, and her friend says, you need to stop worrying so much. You're gonna make yourself sick. And they're like, well, that's not helpful.
Oh my God.
And go see the counselor. And there's and I'm sure you've heard some of that from probably people who are well-intentioned, but
yeah, I call them bow people. They like to put a nice bow on everything, and that is really triggering for me, because life is messy, situations are messy, and that's okay. And rushing people through their healing is never helpful, and telling them to think on the bright side is never helpful. And usually the bow people say things like oh well, at least, and that well, like, let's think of a positive that's come out of your abuse. Well, the victim can get there on their own. That's but right. It is never helpful, and it is really damaging to try to insist that they see things on the bright side, because, and they say that because it's uncomfortable for them. Right. If your emotional pain makes them uncomfortable, therefore they would like you to wrap it up and at least put a positive little spin on it so that they can be comfortable. And
that's right.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
No, and you talk too about how there's nobody. Sometimes you don't know what people know in your previous place, and what I was telling my congregation this other day, that when it comes to Mary and Joseph, we have the scriptures and we know what happened. The Holy Spirit overshadowed Mary, and that was a miraculous thing, and she gave the virgin birth. But in Jesus's day and time, there was always some people that thought that Joseph knocked up Mary. That was not cleared up. They didn't have the scriptures. That wasn't written down for them at that moment. People had to accept that by faith. And some people thought, man, that's a pretty wild story, And so if people are doubting you, they did that for Mary too. So okay, so if that brings any comfort, you're in that category, and I think that's what we think. I want to be this great person like Mary. Really, you really do? Okay, well.
And what comforts me the most is that God knows the truth. So
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's really all I do care about. And scripture and my faith has helped me understand that I don't owe explanations to people, and that I don't have to defend myself. And so, in my book, it took a lot of years to have the healing to get there, but I had to get enough healing under my belt to write a book where I wasn't defending myself.
Yes.
I wasn't trying to get retribution. I wasn't, I had to get to a place where that I was fine letting that be God's job, and letting, justice be up to him. And so, it's a process, but
it is. So some of you out here who are hurting, you may not have gone through what Amy went through, but you've gone through, most everybody has gone through some hurt. And if you had just this wonderful childhood, great family, I just praise the Lord for that you didn't go through that. And I'm glad for you, but just be honest and say, I don't know how to speak to that. I just love you and I pray for you. And then look for people who can help friends like Amy. You don't have to give them all the answers, okay? Because but people can work through things. And Amy, you said something a minute ago. You said, it isn't helpful all the time for somebody to say, well, look the good that came out of it. But you told me something a minute ago, and you said how you and your husband's marriage has deepened and is reset. So, but that still doesn't mean, though, while God used that, I would say, to help her in her life, this abuse, we should still try to stop it. Okay, just because God is using bad things, we are still called as pastors, as Christians, to put a stop to it and not wait till the end of time when Jesus gets back. But the good news is God will bring good things out of the bad stuff. But
and he will. And it's good for victims to recognize those things when they're ready.
Right,
it just is helpful for other people to say, can you please make me more comfortable by giving me 3 positive things that came out of your abuse, because I just can't sit in this uncomfortableness of your pain. And I'm just saying, as a listener, or as someone trying to be there for a victim, let the victim's process take as long as it takes, and let their grief take as long as it takes, and their anger as long as it takes.
That's right.
God will work with us and will get us to that place. If we're open to him, he will bring us to the place where eventually we can see good in it. It's really hurtful, and it shuts victims down.
That's right.
To rush them to that.
That's right. That's
for your own comfort level.
I would say that Christians that are trying to be helpful in that way really have a low view of God, and they think they have a high view of God. I'm going to do God's work. I'm going to help Amy get over this. Well, no, God can handle it. I promise you.
Yeah.
We need to
he does have counselor in his name. So
that's right. Wonderful counselor.
And I love that. I love that.
But cry with people like Amy. I think that would be just, she's crying, weep with her. Just shed tears and say, I'm so sorry, and you're loved. And I promise you that'll be healing. People that understand. If you don't understand, it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to understand the specifics of the abuse to understand the grief and the betrayal and the hurt and the confusion. And so really, like you said, just grieving with someone is a gift.
It is. And there was a popular gospel music song. It's been nearly 50 years ago. I listen to a lot of classic music, and Gord Jensen wrote a song, Tears Are Language That God Understands. And the Bible speaks of weeping, and you spoke of emotions, and I think we do try to shut down emotions, or either we try to stay on a high all the time. I tell my people that there's this church in Dallas, North Carolina. They're one of the old time Pentecostal churches, and they'll still jump, shout, dance in the aisles. And I said, if y'all notice, whenever they do that, though, it's always based on some wonderful theological truth that's been presented, not just because their musicians can jam. Now they can get after it. That's not why they do that. But you can also tell there are people that cry, that they've had pain. They talk about it, sickness, pain, physical pain, and those are real too. And you can't have the shout without the tear. And there's so many ways that we should worship God. I would say too, maybe for some like Amy who are, hey, where do I find my place in church? I don't know if you're open to this, Amy, but I've been telling more people that maybe they should begin to have a Bible study with some other people in their home. Find a gifted, godly person that would come on another night. And
That's a good idea.
I think there's more house churches that need to be formed. And because I can see why it would even be scary for you to put yourself under the authority of people till they can prove that that's not all rebelliousness on her part. Or on our part. I've had leaders that have been less than helpful, and I think even somewhat spiritually abusive to me, and that makes leadership hard, so those are some ideas. Yeah, those are some things that we can do, and or finding a godly pastor that you listen to as a podcast, and then break it down and maybe discuss it after it's over. There's guys like me need to not preach 35 and 40 minutes for you to do that, so I need to shorten it a little bit. So, but no, Amy, you've shared so many wonderful things, and we're going to tell people in a minute how to get your book and the resources you have. Do you go places and speak and share your story, or?
I haven't yet, but I would love to. I think COVID has slowed some of that down, but I've done podcasts and some radio interviews, but that's it. But I'm open to that, and I hope God opens those doors.
Yes. He will in his time. I promise you. That's. I just say that you and the guests that have been on this podcast. I had a YouTube channel that was hovering around, 68, subscribers for a while, and I've more than doubled that. And the people are also hearing our messages and our music as well as these podcasts here. And like I say, we just need to do the good we can do,
right?
Not worry about having 1 million followers or.
Yeah.
So you're doing good with that. Is there anything, I guess, maybe I didn't touch on that you want to share with people before we go today?
I say this a lot, but I guess I just want victims, especially adult victims, to understand that they're not alone, and that what happened to them was not their fault, because there is no ability to give consent in a relationship with an imbalance of power. Especially religious leader to congregant is a huge imbalance of power, but it could be doctor patient, teacher student. That there is no such thing as a mutual affair when people are not on the same playing field. So that's a very unfair, assessment to make. And just that, God is not the church all the time, that not to let an abuser, they take so much from us, and they take almost everything from us. Don't let them take your faith as well, because then you've given them everything.
That's right.
And I refuse to give my abuser that power over me, so I had to work on forgiving him and things like that, so I could keep my relationship with God intact. And I guess that's all. I mean, I have so much I could say, but those are just important things.
Sure. I agree that, that abuse is not your fault. And we say to fellow pastors and spiritual leaders, if you think someone's behaving inappropriately toward you and you're becoming attracted to them, you need to you need to run from that person, report that person, but you can never, it's never okay for you to have an affair with somebody. We need to understand, we say, well, our pastors are human and they were tempted. And no, if there's somebody in the congregation, no, that's if they run off with a prostitute or somebody else that's not under their ministry, that's still bad, but that's not the same. But it is an odious, wicked thing to abuse the power that you have under you. So yeah, that's youth ministers. You don't need to be dating students in your ministry. You need to leave the ministry, and then if you want to date that person, there's just things we cannot do. Okay. And you cannot make excuses for it.
The leaders need to remember that they're usually being seen as a father figure.
That's right.
Or as a representative of God.
That's right.
And so they can do so much damage because of those two things.
Yes, they can. And dads, I just as a dad, we have to. I will say this in my church, pastor. There's pastors. There's that who may be listening today. There's things that I've disappointed people in my church because I've chosen my family sometimes over ecclesiastical thing that people wanted me to do. And I'm willing to lose my ministry before I'd lose my family. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of us need to remember that. Some of you are stressed, you're overworked, and you start trying to, so you start justifying other things. You say, I would never get to the place that her abuser would be. If you don't take care of your relationship with the Lord, you start being a people pleaser all the time. You'll start finding excuses. I'm not here to blast the man. He does some good, but and he's made his way back some in ministry. But Jimmy Swaggart, I don't think he started out as a guy that intended to go down the road he went. He actually drove a vehicle, and he, drove all over the country, lived in a little mobile home, a little trailer. And sometimes we do that for so long, we think, well, now God owes me. Now it's time we hit the big time. No, God will pay you in the end. Okay. In the end, I had more struggles since I've deeply served the Lord than I did when I was being sort of lukewarm. So no easy fix, but Amy has given us some wonderful things to consider, painful things, but there's hope in this season. But Amy, I have one more question I wanted to ask. I know you said you wrestle with the depression and things. Have you found any help with that, or is there still a little bit of the gloom, the cloud that wants to come in there?
Most of my depression, I feel like, now it isn't 100%, but a lot of it was my spiritual disconnection and my anger and distance from God over the years. And so I'm not saying that I don't still struggle with it. Sometimes it doesn't have as big of a hold on me as it used to. And, so ironically, I went to this doctor to get help for depression, and then his abuse, shattered my life, and but allowed God to come in an even bigger, more meaningful way. And bring a lot of healing to that depression. Now I do take medication.
Yes.
And I do occasionally reach out and do therapy when I think, that it's needed. But for me, a lot of my healing was spiritual.
Yes. You just hit on something spiritual, but you're getting some counseling from time to time, and you're taking some medication.
Right.
That's a good trinity of finding healing, because guess what? I occasionally see a counselor, and I have other ministers that think, I think they think, well, I guess that's good for you, but man, you always haven't seen a counselor. What's wrong with you? I don't care. I can't worry about that.
No.
I take some medication, and yes, and by taking medication, my mind is better. I take Lexapro, which is a low dose, but I take some that helps depression a little bit and anxiety a lot.
Yeah, I see no shame in that at all.
Oh, I tell it. I announce it. I want people to know about it.
Yeah. And so, it's huge when I say a lot of my healing was spiritual. I am not referring to what everyone talks about as like, well, I just pray more now, or I, whatever.
Or you got delivered, hallelujah.
Yeah, it's not that. I still work at it. It is much better. And I need to, it's also key to stay connected to friends or mentors or a group of some sort, because I'm a little more isolated than I used to be, but I do still have some close connections. And we cannot do this life alone. So that is another key to healing, is making sure that you're staying open and honest and connected to a couple people.
Yes, that's right, man. That's wonderful advice. So well, there's been good things shared. My spirit has been renewed and encouraged, and I'm challenged as a leader to be a better leader and make sure I'm shepherding the flock and protecting them from wolves, because pastor friends and spiritual leaders, there are wolves out there trying to hurt our flock, and we need to make sure that does not happen. And yes, the Lord heals things. He's healed and worked in Amy's life, but it's been messy. So it's just better to us not have the messiness if we can avoid it. So we deal with it now, we deal with it later, and many other people will have to deal with it. So the good news is there is healing and restoration. So Amy, where can we find some of your products and your books and things? And we'll put this on the screen for those who are watching. We'll put a link here on the podcast where people can look and can click on that. So where do we go to find more about your ministry and about your book?
If you would go to my website, it is www.amy, Nordhues, Nordhues as in Sam.com. And kind of in the middle of the first screen, you can sign up to follow my blog. I have as many resources on there that I have been able to accumulate for victims, mostly of therapist and clergy abuse, reporting to medical boards, reporting to licensure boards, things like that, as well as emotional support. There's a page where you can buy a signed copy of my paperback book, and then there's links to where you can buy the books and the ebook on Amazon and wherever else books are sold.
Marvelous, marvelous. And Amy has said she'd be open to coming possibly and speaking. I'm sure there's a plan that they could probably message you there, I guess. And
yes, they can email me. I'll respond to anyone who emails me through my website. I will also throw out there that there's a resource on my site called TELL. It's Therapy Exploitation Link Line. They're a great resource for therapy and clergy abuse victims, as well as SNAP, which is Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. But you don't just have to, it doesn't have to be a priest. It can be clergy. It could be, they're really trying to broaden into any kind of abuse. So those are two different places you can reach out for help.
Marvelous. Thanks. So yes, if you're looking for resources, if you're needing resources, keep seeking. And here's some you can do. Whatever you do, don't quit. Don't quit trying to find help. I promise you there's people who want to help you. And sorry if others have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. I promise you, Amy's out here to help you. I want to help you. And there are some really good people that want to help. And as I pastor, my job takes me also out amongst people, and occasionally people pour out their heart and share with me. And this is far more common than it ought to be. So if this has happened to you, you are not alone. But there are people willing to help heal you and to put a stop to it. So, but let's don't let the evil people in this world win. And Amy, I don't know how you feel about this. A lot of people don't. It's like I'm closing on a negative note, but I'm not one of these hellfire damnation preachers that's always preaching about hell. But I teach about it occasionally, and I take a different approach on it. I say, there's a comforting part about that doctrine. People think it's unloving, but it's comforting, because people who do not repent of these things are going to get what they have coming to them. A holy God is not going to let that slide. And so people who want to sort of say, well, I don't know about a loving God sending people there. He wouldn't be very loving if he didn't send some folks there. Okay, so that's, but I hope that all the bad folks repent and get right, because that's a bad place to go. I don't hate these folks, but at the same time, the religious leaders, let me just tell you something. You can't hide behind your religiosity and your position. I don't care how many sermons you've preached, how much people you've claimed to reach for the Lord. If you're covering up this kind of stuff and not repenting, that's a sign that I'm not sure you're going to be with the Lord one day. Okay, so that's just a word of warning. And I find comfort in the fact that it's all going to be exposed. But you know what? In this life, folks, let's do what we can now to alleviate the pain. And the Lord also expects us to stick up for the flock and shepherd them. The Oak Ridge Boys, years ago, when they were singing gospel music, sung a beautiful song called "Don't Scatter the Sheep," and it speaks of coming out of Ezekiel 34. And it says we must shepherd the people, we must bind up the broken, heal the wounded. And so let's be good Samaritans and love others today. So thank you, Amy. Thank you for sharing your story. And I just know God is using this, and he's going to in the future. You were a blessing. So,
thank you.
You're always loved by Jesus, don't you know perfectly? So I tell everybody that. So well, may the Lord bless all of you and keep you. I can't tell you that we're right here in the Christmas season. I may take a week or two break to get the next podcast up, but we'll have another one coming. But again, go to www.amynordhues.com, and there's all the resources and information about her ministry, her book, and I call it a ministry because she's seeing people, going to help bind up the broken and the wounded, and she wants to help you with that. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. I will see you next time. God bless.
While walking in the woods one day, not so long ago, I saw an old discarded tie from long, long ago. And there in its circle, wildflowers did grow. Bloom where you are planted, and God will make you grow. Bloom where you are planted, and God will make you grow. Tell other people that Jesus loves them so. Tell them how he came to earth and died to set them free. And bloom where you are planted, wherever that might be.